if I can, I'll think about it.
I've got seeds.
Everybody ready?
We're good to go?
Let me call to order the work session for the Common Council, City of Plattsburgh, New York, for this May 4th, 2017. We've got a pretty full agenda tonight, a couple of very important issues. We will need to go very briefly into executive session to discuss the matter of the recent arbitration ruling on behalf of the City Fire Service versus the City of Plattsburgh. So perhaps 10 minutes with your indulgence, and then we'll be back there. Yes? 5 minutes? Okay.
Just need a motion to go on second.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep. Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's the second time in a row.
Yeah, thanks.
Yours? Oh, you want to close it?
I believe the plan over there.
I have some of the formal stuff that I can. Yes. I'll look for it. I don't know where it is.
I just, that's
In my big scheme of things, I don't know where it is. I agree with Strickland Wine Company Two that were running for the state legislature. I give that a couple of others. I hear you.
I talked to the guys with the fire department, and there's a lot more to that. Well, listen, hey. That's where I am. That's the question.
You should go, but I love it, ask this question, tough.
Not far.
Oh, no. You again? MSNBC. CBS, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post.
Was that the night that it was turned
Yeah,
down?
and then,
Okay,
so you have to look on the website, it shows there's a separate place where you can listen to the audio.
Yeah, I remember that, because I did
Yeah.
that once, but that was the one.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, well, I think it is, I would have to double check, but I know it's one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go, I
I
put it
think it
under.
was because our lawyers called us when it was done and said, hey, we got a picture of the audio.
Yeah,
We wanna know what
if you go
happened.
under how do I find, I put it under there. How do I find, and it's in there, it should say audio minutes of such and such.
Oh, good, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's down till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I expect to not be here.
It was October, I put my note here, it's October 16th.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's very faint, you couldn't really understand the issue.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Has anybody complained that we're not printing it anymore? So they That's the best Where's this been? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
So then you know they're.
Is there any way for you to add the audio for the YouTube? No, I don't know about that. Yes, she said it was happening.
It was some kind of a glitch.
It's tied to the phone. I guess
I'm getting them and I will be representing. Notified the city that we're planning on doing this, and in 30 days, and that's when I sat down with all of the unions. And I said, you know, you can only, I know that I'm holding offered all the as a my understanding of the law. You don't have to say so there's already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's already and 0. And they're also they gave I do that all the time. Last time I did it, don't have to have it. I'll sign it in maybe a week. Or if they're pretty they are, then we want to do it by
Like,
Let's resume. I apologize, it took a little bit longer for us to discuss. We are discussing the recent arbitration ruling from the arbitrators in the matter of the Plattsburgh firefighters with the city of Plattsburgh. Notices were made in this discussion. There will be a subsequent vote by the councilors. Is there anything else on the agenda that any individual councilors would like to have extended discussion, any requests for information from department heads, etc.? Seeing none, let's please begin the meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed.
Present.
Counselor Armstrong.
Here.
Counselor Kelly.
Here.
Counselor Dowdle.
Here.
Counselor Ensel.
Here.
Counselor Casper.
Here.
Counselor Kretzer.
Here.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on April 27, 2017 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, seconded by Councilor Kretzer. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending May 3rd, 2017 in the amount of $104,955.38 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Dowdle, seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the reports as listed are hereby ordered, received, and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the bills audited by the Common Council for the week ending May 5th, 2017 in the amount of $444,892.01 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, seconded by Councilor Casper. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the part of the meeting where we ask any individuals to come and please address the council. At this point, we ask you to confine yourself to issues that are on the agenda. There will be another public comment period at the end of the meeting as well. Anybody like to come up? And then we'll continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves contract number 2016-08 Lorraine Street reconstruction and roadway improvements be awarded to Luck Brothers Inc. for a total bid price of $552,000. Sufficient funding is available from the 2016 Street Resurfacing and Improvements Project H5110.57.
Moved by Councilor Casper, seconded by Councilor Kretzer. Discussion.
Is Kevin here? Yeah. I'm very excited. Thank you.
So was Lorraine.
Yes.
We're also excited that the winning RFP came in actually a little bit lower than the amount we had allocated for this project. So thank you for your work on that. Please, Councilor Kelly.
We had some discussion about this, I believe it was last week, and if I remember correctly, this fund, all of this money is not being paid by the city, or at least the general fund. Some of it is coming from water and sewer. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct. There's approximately $100,000 from the water fund to pay for the water main portion, and the rest is all New York State CHIPS fund. So there's no city general fund money.
That is excellent news to hear, Kevin. Thank you.
And we just received our CHIPS allocation was slightly larger than last year, if I recall.
Right, the governor increased it by about 15%, which for us results in about $50,000 extra, and that falls under the Winter Recovery Program. That's a 5-year program, and we're in our 2nd year now.
Thank you.
So that'll go away. It's not a permanent increase, but a temporary increase.
Any other questions? We're prepared to vote. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chairman to adjust the 2017 general fund budget through an increase in appropriated fund balance and an increase in judgments and claims equally by $7,861.71 to pay for the refund awarded for the property tax grievance settlement to the Samuel F. DeLoss home for the 2016 tax year.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Dowdle. Discussion, please. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2017 rec complex budget through an increase in miscellaneous estimated revenue and an increase in marina capital outlay equally by $50,000 to pay for docks acquired from the GE Corp. Through a contribution from Caldwell Marine.
Moved by Counselor Dowdle, second by Counselor Ensel. Discussion. Please.
I received some information from Steve Peters yesterday about this project, and the $50,000 is just a beginning, as I understand it. There's an additional $22,500 to move the docks, and that, we may have already done it, I'm not sure.
We have, and it came out less than that.
Okay, good, good. And then there's some expense to modify the docks slightly to, fit them into their new location. And I was wondering if Mr. Peters is here and if he could tell us how much that's going to cost.
No. We're still waiting for the information from the dock manufacturer for those fittings. And that's the last piece of information we need before we can distribute the report to the council and to the mayor.
Okay. And then there are some additional costs for parts, cameras, electric setup, engineer designs. With the $22,000 I mentioned, that all comes to $44,550. And then there's some ongoing expense with this project. There's materials and supplies, there's electric cost, repairs to equipment, and insurance, and that comes to, and the bonding, of course, an additional $14,305. Is that correct?
Sounds about right.
So the total then is $70,000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
Including
there's an
purchasing?
operational expense plus a capital expense. Could be.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't have that in our budget for this year.
And because it requires still some design changes, I don't think we'll be immediately implementing this strategy anyway. We still have to gain some approvals, so I think there'll be ample time for the council to discuss this in the next couple of months. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair to say. There's also a significant revenue component to the docks on the subsequent page of that document too, which overshadows those operational expenses and the capital expenses.
Okay, I'm wondering if we should be voting on this if we don't have all the facts in place yet.
I understand this is just a vote on the transfer of funds. You had forwarded the 50,000 to make the purchase. This is just transferring, if I'm not mistaken, Richard, the
This is just a budget adjustment. to
budget
show the
adjustment.
receipt, the revenue and the posting.
pay
of
For the
cost.
actual material
So-
of the docks.
No, the posting of the cost in 2017 and the posting of the receipts for the revenue.
So you're prepared to decrease your operating budget to pay for these docks?
No, so we forwarded $50,000 to make the purchase. We received a $50,000 donation to cover that expense. That receipt was done beginning of April.
Okay,
And so that's all that this is.
So-
This isn't suggesting anything other
so
than.
what we're out then is the additional expense to set this up and then to operate it is,
Not yet. What we're out is the 22,500 to move them here.
okay. Okay, thank you, Steve, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Steve.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Cretzer?
Yes.
Resolved that the city council hereby extends the jurisdiction of the interest arbitration panel hearing the dispute between the city and Plattsburgh Permanent Firemen's Association per
I'd like to make
case.
a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
So we'll have a motion and seconder, and that will act as a motion and second to begin discussion on the motion. So we have a second. Second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll begin discussion on the motion, and you'll have it in your packet on the bottom of page 3. Please, Councilor Ansel.
I'm just wondering if we have any idea of the exact figures. No, we're talking percentages, but I'm wondering if we have any idea of what this will cost and what it would represent as far as a tax hike or.
If Chamberlain Marks can comment, I believe that for the there's two scenarios here. There's a potential award that which, if you vote this down, you'll be imposing a reevaluation by the arbitration committee, and they'll come back with a ruling. From some of the language within the document, be somewhere around 2% for the 2 years, 2012 and 2013 in question. The cost to that with the various, with the retroactive increase in wages, FICA, various other adjustments, retirement, 207A, other obligations, I calculate that will come to the neighborhood of about an $878,000 retro payment. If you voted this in the affirmative, this will result in 3 increases of 1.5% for 2012, 2013, and 2014, followed by your acceptance of 3 increases for 2015, 16, and 17 of 1.75%. There's also a concession on a health care plan that they've moved over from a POS to a PPO system. That's relatively inconsequential financially for the city, although it would be more convenient for us to reduce the number of plans compared to the number of plans offered currently. If we were to do that, the total retro being over 6 years instead of 2 years would be rather steep. It would force the city to bond that over the next 5 years. If we were to bond the increase over the next 5 years and also look at the pay increases over the next 5 years, you'd expect about from my calculations, about a $640,000 increase in each of the next 5 years, to give you an idea of
Each year for the next
each
5
year for
years?
the next 5 years. Are those relatively accurate, consistent with your
I
calculations?
defer to you on that one because we've done the numbers, what, 5 or 6 times?
Mhm.
And I gave you my worksheets yesterday and I think those are bang on, but I don't have them with me.
Mhm.
So,
His numbers differed a little bit from mine because we're doing them independently, but whenever we did them, we ended up usually pretty within about 5% of each other's calculations. So to be clear, this would be accepting an alternative award for 6 years, which would be from the years 2012 to 2017. If you didn't accept that award, the arbitrators would then impose upon the city an arbitration combining themselves to 2012 and 2013, just so everybody understands how that process works. It wouldn't then require you to accept that alternative, or the 2-year award, because that would be then an arbitrator's decision imposed upon the city and the firefighters.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? If you're prepared to vote, then roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
No.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Dowdle?
No.
Counselor Enzel?
No.
Counselor Casper?
No.
Counselor Kretzer?
No.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves a police department employee to attend the New York State Police Crimes Against Children Seminar in Albany, New York from May 22nd through 26, 2017. The total cost will not exceed $290.50 and will be expensed out of the asset forfeiture fund, and lodging will be paid by the Child Advocacy Center.
Moved by Counselor Dowdle and seconded by Counselor Ansel. Discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
I believe there's no resolutions for initial consideration. This is the time in the meeting that I ask any councilors to offer any liaison reports or any new business.
We held a focus group with a number of community leaders on Monday evening. It was very well attended, and we were very happy to receive their input concerning the best ways to reach out to the public and get input from them. We received many considerations and concerns and suggestions that I don't think we would have thought of on our own. And
this is in regards to strategic planning.
Oh, yes, I needed to say that. Thank you. And so with that information, we're going to go back to the drawing board at our next meeting. We're going to be thinking about events that we can dovetail with this summer in order to get public feedback about the future of our city, and figure out the best ways for the public to be heard.
Thank you.
Can I ask along that line?
Sure.
How much of what we've done is being used, or is this starting over? I mean, Saratoga Associates, we were at the middle school many
Right.
times.
Well,
everybody
the
was running
difference
on.
is, and you know, that was one of the things that Paul DeDominicus reviewed with the folks who attended, to look at the number of documents that have kind of form a foundation from which to go forward. You know, one of our tasks as well that has yet to be accomplished is to find the common areas that research and those plans yielded over time. But the nature of a strategic plan is going to be a little bit different than the various other plans that targeted very specific projects. For example, the downtown lakefront revitalization program that we had to do in order to get ready for the DRI and other kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But that just focused on the waterfront itself. So this is going to be a much more comprehensive plan, and we need to get you more information, and that will be forthcoming.
And all of the information, all the past documents, the planning initiatives going back very far, all available on the website and the community development page
That's
for
right.
anyone that's interested,
Nice.
as well as the minutes for the strategic planning meetings.
That's correct.
Thanks to Rochelle.
Thank you.
Please, Mr. Kelly.
The council budget committee, consisting of Becky Casper, Peter Insel, and myself, met with Chamberlain Marks and received a year-to-date spending update Monday. We're very grateful to him for that. And he's actually going to report to us tonight on where we stand, and it's a good time to do this because we are 1/3 of the way through our fiscal year, and it's a great opportunity for us to see where we think we'll stand for the rest of the year and to make any necessary adjustments that might have to be made. We've also been asked by Mayor Reed to come up with a 5-year budget model to present to him, and our deadline is in June 1st. So we worked very hard this week to receive and review several proposed budget models, and I had no idea that some of our department heads are quite adept at preparing these kinds of things. There's some really talented work there, and it's much appreciated. Particularly point out Steve Peters and John Ruff, and of course Mr. Marks. So we'll take a brief look at those tonight to try to get some direction for where to go with this model that we'll be presenting to the mayor.
Thank you for your hard work on that. I know that you started budget hearings right from the very first day of the council back in January. And first of all, I really appreciate that. Obviously, you've taken on a big task to try to resolve a budget in a period where we don't have the latitude of a fund balance to cushion anything. And I invite you all to a press conference tomorrow at 11 a.m. to discuss, and all of you at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning here to discuss the state of the budget for the city of Plattsburgh. I think that it's very good for us to understand these 5-year realities now and have the luxury of actually being able to do something now rather than wait another 8 months until January and then try to zig then instead. So this is difficult, but I really appreciate all your diligence and being willing to look at this with very discerning eyes. And I also appreciate all the help of the department heads that are feeding information into this. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult for them as well to accommodate this, but all of our efforts are appreciated because all of us have a stake in this. Thank you.
Is that open to the public?
It is, yeah.
Will it be here?
It will, yeah, at 11 a.m. Any additional liaison? New business? I had a couple of pleasures this week. I just came out of a meeting about an hour and a half ago with a number of individuals from the county, from the town, from the city, from the private sector, from our department heads to look at some major engineering decisions that we're going to need to make in the next few years. Most of them in the room were engineering types. They had a lot of really good ideas. They're very willing to look at some of our engineering challenges for the city with new, fresh set of eyes and all kinds of expertise, and with a spirit of shared services and collaboration as well. Each one of them, with all their expertise, was very, very willing to continue on this dialogue. We're looking at things such as the repair of the Mead Dam that supplies the water source for the city of Plattsburgh, but also alternatives to the Mead Dam if the Mead Dam becomes so prohibitively expensive we can no longer afford it. They're going to help our engineers look at effluent in the city beach and testing regimes out there with their expertise. They're going to help our engineer Farrington look at some of the larger road and infrastructure projects as well, and I certainly really appreciate their help. I also really had a really enjoyable time last weekend. As you know, there's been a couple of Earth Days or climate marches in the last couple of weeks, and I got to award a proclamation to a young fellow from Westport, a 7-year-old who organized his own environmental march. He's a very charming young man, but the nature of that gathering was about intergenerational sustainability. Let's not do things today that leave a negative financial or environmental legacy in those that follow us in the future. So that was really enjoyable for me to do that. Any other new business? Seeing none, this is the time in the council meeting where we invite individuals from the public to come and address the council on any subject at all. If a number of you want to speak on one issue, we do ask if you'd indulge us by having one representative do so on your behalf. But please come on forward, and there is a 5-minute time limit.
Good evening. My name is Gary Brandstetter. I'm the president of the Plattsburgh City Retirees Association. I want to do a little reminiscing tonight, going back to October 8th of 2015, when that Common Council, which I guess is basically the same except for Mr. Ensel, passed the resolution to take away the Medicare-eligible retirees' contractually guaranteed health care plan, known as Par Plus, and put them all on a Humana Advantage plan. Councilor Casper, with a second from Councilor O'Connell, added addendums to the motion which stipulated that the Humana's plan's pre-authorizations must mirror the Par Plus plan, and the Humana plan must be comprehensive and universal. And after that, former Mayor Calhoun made the statement that if it did not meet that criteria, he would not sign the agreement with Humana, no matter if the councilors passed it. Well, the Humana plan met neither of those criteria, but did the city keep its promise not to go with them? No. Instead, on February 18th, 2016, the council passed another resolution that the Humana plan, basically, they took the addendums out, that the plan did not have to meet those stipulations of the October 8th resolution. That vote pretty much admitted that the Humana plan was not as good or better than the Par Plus plan, for that to have had to have been done. I personally think the honorable thing to have been would to have admitted a mistake and say we're sorry and we'll see if we can come up with something else. But the Humana plan was signed anyway and went forward. The litigation going forward is costing both of the taxpayers of the city and the members of the PCRA hundreds of thousands of dollars. Supreme Court Judge Robert Mueller has stated that, and in quotes, the court finds that the petitioners have demonstrated a likelihood of success on the merits. He further stated the court further finds that petitioners have demonstrated irreparable harm if switched to Humana. Irreparable harm has been defined as that which cannot be repaired, restored, or adequately compensated in money. He says here the loss of coverage under the Blue Plan cannot be recovered by an award of money damages alone, especially for those individual petitioners, which I can't tell you who they are under HIPAA, who face significant health problems. The city's only argument to that was that it would cost them more by keeping the petitioners on the Par Plus plan. The judge's reply to that was, and I quote again, the court finds that a loss of or reduction in health care coverage outweighs any possible monetary loss to the city. Moving forward to October 13th, when a special meeting was called because Humana had notified the city they were leaving, and Mayor Calhoun was proposing to move all of those on Humana to United Healthcare, which was basically the same program as Humana. Apparently the majority of the councilors had done some research and voted the resolution down, and at that meeting 3 of the councilors apologized to us for what they had previously done to us. One of the councilors interviewed after the vote stated to the press that the city budget should not be balanced on the backs of retirees. But after all of that rhetoric, we're still in litigation. One councilor has said that all the PCRA has to do is drop the litigation, and that is true. We're the plaintiffs. We're the only ones that can drop the litigation. But it's not that simple, because that would leave us again at the mercy of the city, and we are painfully aware of what that can result in. The PCRA has been asked to make one last attempt to solve this without going to trial. When I'm done, I'll present you with this letter and the proposal that's attached to the MAC. Your excuse for not acting on the one back in December was that you wanted to act on it at the same time you acted on the optional health care plan proposal. Since the task force was unable to come up with an optional plan, the requirement for a certain percentage of members to opt over to it changed it to a mandatory plan. It was no longer optional, and that is not allowed. That provision of dealing with the revised plan for a vote is gone now. If you decide not to put this on an agenda, we have done what was requested of us. If you vote it down, we'll win because we tried. We did what we were asked. If you vote in favor of this, we both win. Your attorneys and ours would sit down and draft an agreement. You will note that one of the stipulations of the agreement proposed tonight is if the lawyers do reach an agreement and we can sign it, that part of that agreement is that the PCRA agrees to voluntarily withdraw the litigation. So it would be done. Most of you have admitted what you did was wrong. Here again is another chance to do the right and honorable thing. I would ask each of you to look inward when considering this and remember the statement from Benjamin Franklin. The best way to judge a person is whether or not they keep their word. Thank you. And I will give you each a copy of this. The proposal is the very last page. And it's basically what you were presented with back in December with date revisions and that kind of thing. So, Michael, how are you?
Thank you, Gary.
Yes, I'm
We're on you.
Mr. Ansel, how are you? Good, thank you. Becky, how are you? Good, Joshua.
Thank you, Gary.
There. There you go. Do you need one of the minutes? Sure, absolutely. Good now.
Thank you
And
very
I'm
much.
done. Thank you very much.
I'm Jack Downs. I'm here representing the community garden, and I just have a short number of things to tell you. This is a little packet I have to introduce us, for those of you who don't know. We'll talk about our timeline and where we came from. Included in here is a list of contact information for the board members, including me. Should there be any questions or issues that you might want to bring to us, we're happy to have any questions or concerns come to us. The reason I bring this up is there was a few questions and concerns at some recent meetings about a number of things, in particular skunks, for instance. And I just wanted to tell you that, first of all, that we thank the council for its support in the past. It's with the council's support that we have gardened at all on city property. We have a garden in Melissa Penfield Park with 60 plots that has grown over the years since 2009 when we started. We have a 14-plot garden at the Plattsburgh Housing Authority on South Catherine Street. We like to be good neighbors, and we're bringing this up as a suggestion that we think that we can continue to be good neighbors too. Some of the issues that were brought up, I'll mention briefly, was the question of perhaps that our garden might be attracting skunks, as I mentioned. Now, I'm not a skunk expert, but I did get we did get a letter from Cooperative Extension, which is in your packet, with two people who know a lot more about skunks than I do, who explained that they think it's very unlikely that the garden would attract the skunks. That skunks, although they will eat anything, are most likely, what they're really attracted to is meaty snacks. So they like dog food and cat food that's left out. That's one of the big things. They love unsecured garbage, which we don't have in our garden either, especially like meaty garbage, like snacks, stuff in the kitchen. And they really love lawn grubs, which is, when you see torn up places in your yard, sometimes it's from birds, but often it's actually from skunks at night digging up the grubs. So we think that it's unlikely that our garden has attracted skunks. Instead, there are skunks all over the city. As you know, I had a skunk on Saturday night in my backyard, traveling from the garbage at an apartment building on one side of me to an old shed on the other side of me. So they are all around. But if there's, and I've got many gardeners here, and none of us have ever smelled skunk or seen a skunk around the garden, so we think that's unlikely. However, I can understand that people living nearby, seeing the garden, might try to make an association, but we hope that if anyone does see problems, that they would let us know. A couple of other things were mentioned at previous meetings I want to mention is a question perhaps about negative interactions between people playing baseball, perhaps when baseball is flying into the garden, that was suggested, and then maybe negative interactions with the gardeners as a result. This is possible. I haven't had any personal experience with this and actually talked to anyone that has mentioned this before. A foul ball, a very well-hit one, could travel that far. I don't see a baseball doing much substantial damage to the plants, really. It just bounce and roll. But people are people, and I suppose it could be negative interactions. I'm going to make sure to tell all our gardeners, again, that it's important that they represent us well in the community, and that we should always have a positive attitude towards visitors. Most of our interactions have been very positive. And we all appreciate having an open garden where people can come ask questions, and they often do, and we regularly have people walking around through the garden talking with us, and it's often how we get our new gardeners. And in fact, we do have a few plots left this season at both gardens. If anybody would like to garden with us, just Google Plattsburgh Community Garden, and you get information there, or see me, and we'd be happy to have gardeners there. The other thing that was mentioned was perhaps cars driving into the park. And occasionally, especially when we're moving equipment, like moving in compost or bringing in tools for setting up the plumbing for the beginning of the season, you will occasionally see cars in there. We'll make sure to talk to our gardeners that they know, as they should, that cars are not supposed to be used as a regular access to the garden. I think it's a rare thing. In the same way that at the baseball fields, they will sometimes use cars to bring in equipment for the game and stuff like that, and then drive them out again. But we know that we are not supposed to be accessing the garden regularly with cars, and I hope that we don't. And the last thing I want to mention was there was a suggestion that there's another plot available, which on the surface of it might sound like a good idea. The property beside the skate park, which has been worked on, which is fenced in with the skate park, which I've looked at, and I want to suggest that there are some real disadvantages there. And besides the disruption of moving, we really like where we are. And there's good reasons for it. One of the most important things for our garden, or any garden, is full day sun. And that's something we have there. We have great sun exposure. And that property over there, if you start to look at it soon with the leaves coming out, you'll see that it's largely shaded from the west. Some parts scattered shade, some parts pretty heavy shade from very large trees, which would be quite expensive to remove. And from the south, some very large trees giving partial shade also, which would be a big thing to remove too. So I think it acted the fact that it's a very damp plot with the water coming down up the hill there and off the road area too. On Saturday when I looked at it, it was dry enough in our area to bring a truck in for compost, but there I was walking and had water in my shoes just from walking along the back of it because it's surprisingly damp over there. So we wanted to suggest, although the idea of having a fence around the garden it's got pros and cons, and I can see it being seen as an attractive thing. Yet we don't think that would be an appropriate location to move the garden to. But we're willing to talk with the counselor, individual counselors about anything at any time, and open that. I know there are a few other gardeners here who might want to talk. I'm not sure if you have time for them, on some slightly different issues, especially Doug wanted to talk about the beginning of the garden and the resolution that was passed back then and so on from the city. Thank you.
Doug, could you be 1 minute because we asked for
Yes,
5
I
minutes
understand
per
that.
topic.
So just briefly, Conceptually, I'm Doug Buttdorf. I'm the guy who 9 years ago started the community garden group, and the whole point and process that we went through was we established a not-for-profit organization with the city to create a public-private organization so that the city would not have to take on the responsibility and the cost of running and operating a garden that has 74 different gardeners in and out of the garden. It would be adding a significant cost. A recent estimate would be approximately $34,000 just to build a garden similar to the garden that we have at PHA with the same number of plots that we have in our current location. That doesn't include operating expenses and other foundation realities of upsetting the apple cart and moving the existing garden to a new location. But just a quick idea. So the recitals of the original document that was signed by the city and passed through was that this agreement is based upon the following facts and circumstances. The city wishes to establish a community garden program under the auspices of the city recreation department to provide residents with an opportunity to learn more about good food gardening practices and to grow food for personal consumption and donation to food banks, which we do. Hundreds of pounds of products and produce are donated to the food banks. But the key thing is that the city does not want to have the staff resources to establish or administer the community garden program, and that's why we did it as a not-for-profit organization with the liability program and with the license to operate in the park where we have now. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Please come forward.
I'd like to say one additional thing,
Please keep it very short. There's
Okay. I have twin grandsons that are juniors at Plattsburgh High, and they played a lot of Little League through all from coach pitch or whatever the starting thing is right on up. And one of them still plays baseball for the high school, and they do practice over there every once in a while. So I told them about the idea of moving the garden, and on their own, without any prompting from me, that's all I said, was they wanted to move the garden. They came up with most of the points that Jack has made, and they have been over there also helping me with, some digging and weeding at times, so they're familiar.
Thank you.
And I asked them in all the times that they have been at the park playing ball, whether they had or had heard any of their teammates say anything about any negative interactions with gardeners. And they said, "What? No." So they said, for one thing, the balls go more toward the gazebo, if anything, and for another thing, the gardeners just pick the ball up and throw it back, and we don't really have any problems with them. So, and I also want to say about the car, now, I am the one who is most guilty of the car, and I broke my hip a year ago, and I wrenched my ankle recently, and I'm also not that good at heavy lifting. I mean, on a windy day, I have to put rocks in my pockets to keep them blowing away. So I have occasionally, but I'll use my granny cart from now on.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary Alice.
Is Mr. Bois here from Margaret Street? Would you like to come and speak with us for a moment? Thanks very much.
All right, where to begin? Rob Ware, one of the partners redeveloping 460 Margaret Street, the old lakeside apartments. I guess I just want to field any questions and let everybody know that things are moving forward. Right now, things are held up pending basically a bank appraisal, and once the results of that are in, we'll be moving forward very quickly. Really hate to lose the warm days. It's ideal building season, so I guess on the other side of the coin, I've been told there's some public concern, the status of the buildings right now. We did some asbestos abatement back in August, found some vermiculite while doing the abatement and stopped our work. There's really nothing hazardous currently. All the vermiculite is within concrete block cells, all sealed up. All the other asbestos that was identified in the survey over a year ago is sealed behind like 60 years of paint. It's basically in the drywall joint compound, so it's not something friable that's in the air. Unless it's being tampered with, you know, it's safe. So what little demolition you've seen in the back there was an area that we paid to have abated back in August, and it was 100% clean before anything was taken down. I know there's been some confusion and concern, and if anybody has questions, I'm more than willing to answer them.
I do have a question. The last report I saw from you was that contingent on the bank appraisal that you had a timeline of resuming demolition by, was it May 15th?
Yes.
Or-
Was that starting? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, yeah,
Correct.
starting the demolition. So do you feel that you're still on track for that target date?
I would say, well, that target date is a moving target.
Yeah.
And that appraisal's been ordered, and usually, I'd say that date's probably gonna change by 3 weeks.
So
Start date,
it's gonna
potentially.
bring us until June,
Yes, early June.
okay?
And that's, just so the public knows, that demolition and the new construction can happen simultaneously. The first 18 units that we're structuring or building are forward mostly of the existing lakeside apartments.
Now, the appraisal is attached to your application for increased funding, correct? I mean, because that was one of the issues that you needed to get more funding to meet the standards of Department of Labor and,
Well, there was additional cost with the finding of the vermiculite,
right,
substantial additional cost,
right,
which was part of the financial delay.
right.
The project's taken a couple different turns because of that. We went from not being sure if we were going to rent these units or if we were going to start a condo association and sell them. We've had a couple partners move in and out of the partnership with different opinions on where that should be. And right now, to be honest, we're going to let the bank decide. Whatever one's easier to get funding for, that's what we're going to do.
Well, is that gonna add more delay to the whole project? I mean, letting the bank determine the
No,
nature?
no. They've already, we've already got approval to basically build 18 apartments as is. The difference is whether or not we want to put more money down or not. So if we want to just accept their offer right now, we can move forward, but I've got different opinions between partners, and they don't all really want to fork up more money. So if we can use this new bank we've been dealing with in the last month, start a condo association, you know, we can still rent them. We can still do the same thing. We could have 18 condos and just rent them all. But what they're doing is, I'm not sure how familiar you are with commercial appraisals, but essentially a commercial appraisal doesn't care what it costs to build. It only cares what the income producing capability is. With the taxes being so high in our area, essentially, when you take that expense and add it, it really kills the value of the property. So if you back up and say, okay, we're gonna build these condos, and you've got all these comparables in the area that's like Harborview and whatnot, it justifies the cost. From a rental aspect, it doesn't justify the cost, because there's really no rentals in the city that are up at that level where we need to be to justify the high cost of acquiring that property, plus the demolition, plus the cost of construction with today's rates. It's just really tough to build a rental on the lake with that carrying cost.
Well, and I'm sure you're aware of this, and we want you to have this project completed. We really do.
Yes.
But of course, everyone who lives around there, they're looking at the prospect of their own property being of less value because of the state of that property right now. So I represent that ward, and I am continually asked. I mean, it's been, as you know, it's been years since it was damaged, and the state it's in right now is ridiculous. So
6 years.
that's why I keep coming back, and you can imagine how frustrated I am and the neighbors are to hear that you're gonna be pushing another 3 weeks on getting done.
Right. If it was up to me, we'd start tomorrow. So, I mean, we've got the means to do this. I've just got some very conservative partners that are like, until we get something from the bank in writing, you know, we're all just sitting on our hands, and I can't really tell them what to do, so. It'll move forward, it's
Okay,
just a matter of
and,
time.
you know, what I would appreciate is continual updates on that,
Okay.
because I think that one of the most frustrating things is to not know, not to have any knowledge, and I try to communicate with my constituents about what's going on. I mean, they'll be frustrated to know we're adding another 3 weeks after I told them May 15th. But if I can give them information, then that mitigates in some way that
Right. And
frustration.
I'm not saying May 15th won't happen, I'm just
Yeah.
saying it's likely it could stretch a little.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Presser, second by Councilor Ensel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-minute break before the budget hearing? 5 minutes. Yeah, I just need to give him a document for him to look at. Could I come back in just 1 minute?
Is that my answer? Sorry. Is that my answer? Secretary. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. If you don't want to do that.
So which one do you want to talk about, the firefighters union? Do you guys need to project it for the record?
Sure.
We may.
So that's arbitration versus town's settlement options. Can you talk about the decisions you made there?
There we go. It's
It seems like the board was unanimous in the discussion.
Do you need me to print my name or can you read it? Good job. Thank you.
So can I ask you, can you just explain the implications between those two? I heard you explain some of it. There's an $800,000 choice that everybody made versus the $600,000 a year for the next.
I know how to do it. I can get it going.
There's two scenarios for the arbitrators. One scenario is, would you like to accept, extend the term to 6 years, and accept the 6-year schedule that they offer? The council voted no to that, means the arbitrators will then impose a 2-year arrangement for us.
Well, I think it was more Mickey. Yeah. Okay. I wish I could claim to be a gardener. I can't. But I'm really glad that he's there.
Violated notifications.
That would come out to about $630,000 less. And 5 years, year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the council is weighing the financial implications of both.
And the decision basically all, unanimous no decision basically means that you're gonna go with the short-term version. Does that mean you have to sort of revisit this again in a couple of years? Is that
We'll
the
have to
problem?
revisit it. The firefighters will then likely ask for an arbitration for the next 2 years and the period of the 2 years after that. Each time when you go to one of those arbitrations, the city puts in this position, the firefighters put in there. Usually the arbitrators will balance 2 or 3 different factors. They may do a certain increase for the next 2 years that they offer the city, so a way to streamline our healthcare costs or something with vacation, something else like that.
Is it, so from what I heard from the discussion so far, it was just too expensive to take that longer-term version with those increases. Are those increases something you might anticipate coming at some point in the future anyway, or how does that work?
They may, given the financial straits for the city.
saved for the firefighters in case they win? So there's no fund that exists that was like looking back at, maybe they would win, so this is something the city's gonna have to come up with.
Private company agreement to put money aside for expected future liability. We have the same issue with trying to figure out how we'll afford the retirees' pension or healthcare costs. We've not put, city's not put money aside over the last 20 or 30 years to pay for the next 20 or 30 years. People who have retired already or are already active employees who could retire. So if we stop offering that benefit today, right now, we've still got an unfunded liability of $135 million. The city hasn't put any money aside. Our auditors explained to us that in 2027, that liability will go to $276 million. Again, we have to scale of how big $276 million is. Remember that our entire tax levy every year is only about $10 million. So these are huge sums that the city's trying to wrestle with. I'm sure that weighed into the council's decisions when they suffer that kind of concern about any increased expenses going on.
That's going to be part of your conversation tonight, too.
And presumably tonight, if the budget is in the public.
I really appreciate it. So helpful.
Whoa!
Good luck. You got my silver?
They're on the list. They are on the list. They are, because they're actually at a price point.
So, there are pretty big changes.
Thanks.
He's back on the original plan that we offered.
They are. It's funny because they
That's a kind of competitive. So just so you see.
Oh, that's great.
Between demolition and disposal.
Oh my God. Whatever you do, you have to be first in line for a ticket. I've seen it about 10 times.
I was just heard yours first.
You're spending time.
Wow.
Structure, straight felt property. In the meantime, the city is served by the violations of the amendment development. These properties are for the city's friend rollback. Getting away from one land, take it over. Because that's not going to be projected out. That changes the size.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much for your help. Have a good night.
Wow.
Have you got your spreadsheet too?
Oh, yeah, all kinds of spreadsheets and everything else you can imagine. Just to bore you to tears.
So there's no interest?
You're right. I'll be right back.
Cool.
Okay? Okay.
Bring me a Milky Way. Snickers.
Right. Change it? Yeah.
First time we read, it's like, get that thing away from me.
Wow. That's
Where'd you get your sunburn today? Too fun.
So make your own dog. It was the only animal that I don't.
You went south? When you were on your road trip, I was just talking about today.
That's fine. I cleaned up the yard today.
Yeah.
Court rains for the next 10 days. Yep.
Well, that sounds like a great trip. You know people down there, or did you just
The last
tourists?
stop, kid's sister lives in Thornville, South Carolina. You can almost walk to Charlotte, North Carolina. So we stopped there. It's always a good stop. Yep. Other than that, and we stayed in Missouri for a few days.
Oh, yeah. Very good. How's Ray doing?
Yeah.
Good.
That's,
Hey.
We had the
Yeah.
it's stupid.
triple quadruple.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with
Okay,
them.
I'd like to call to order the May 4th, 2017 City Council budget meeting, which works, but, and I appreciate your patience with that. We're gonna call the meeting to order, and everyone who's present, everyone who needs to be present is here, so we won't do a roll call. We're gonna have an additional speaker tonight, Richard Marks, and there may be some other people who would like to speak to us as well, primarily department heads. The first thing we'd like to do is get right into our citywide year-to-date budget update. That'll be Mr. Marks speaking to us. As I mentioned earlier, we're a third of the way through the fiscal year, so this is an excellent time to review our finances, and I'll ask Mr. Marks to take it away. I have some of these things on the screen. If you'd like, I can display them.
If you'd like to.
Up there, Mr. Marks. It's up to you.
I updated the graphs after the meeting on Monday with Councilors Kelly and
Okay, they're
Ansel.
gonna be different, and so.
And I did send those, and Councilor Casper was there too.
Yes.
Putting them both on the same scale, because one was on a 60% scale, one was on the 65 because of the distortion we get from the revenue for the parking fund being a very high number this time of year, percentage-wise. So anyway, I sent out the package to all of the department heads and the counselors, and I hope you get a chance to look at it, everybody.
Do you have copies for us, Mr. Marks?
I didn't make copies.
I'll try to display them on the screen.
I think I got,
Here, you can use these. Let me give you the ones that I do have.
The one you sent before? Cause I've got it.
The one I just sent this week, yes.
Yeah.
I have all of those documents if you need them.
Did you turn it on?
Basically, if you want to compare these two.
Yeah, he did. He
Oh,
did
you
turn
turned
it
it on?
Yes. All you have to do is display
Here's the
them.
two graphs.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to pour through the numbers of what makes up the graphs, but that's those two packages right there.
See what these are. The one that showed the graphs, and is that the same, Richard?
That's the new ones, yes.
Okay, let's go
I
with
think,
those.
do you have, well, go down, I think about 5 pages. Let's see if it's the updated ones. I think it is. Keep going. One more. One more. Just one more. There you go. Okay, yeah. You see the revenue for the parking lot is off the graph, but that's just because I made the graphs both at 60%
Okay.
value. So if you go back up to the top picture,
You want?
I don't care. I'll do.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
the first graph that's in this package is where we stand year to date this year. It's supposed to be at 33.3% of the budget, 1/3 of the way through the year. You can see where the budget line is across the middle at 33 1/3, and revenues are above that. All expenses are either equal to that or below that. So it's a very good sign when you compare it to the page that you were just at for last year, which you have to jump down 6 or 7 pages for. I think I'll start sending those two out together. Okay. Last year at this time, we were over in expenditures in 2 funds for the library and the water, but I believe that the distortion there is from capital expenditures that had to be recognized in their cost. But year to date, when you look at the figures on the schedules that support these, the payroll expenditures, in a nutshell, were at 28%, and last year at this time, they were 31%. So we're running ahead of budget on expenditures for payroll, which is great. And that's a lot of pages down, Josh. Drop way down.
Yeah.
Those are just the supporting data for those graphs, as adjusted for certain things you have to take out because of booking receivables for taxes and so forth. Okay, right here. There you go. You see the bottom line here on this page. This is next page is the overtime analysis. And this is the one that's of particular interest for a lot of different departments because they have to manage their overtime. Pretty much though, we're ahead of last year. Well, excuse me, we're falling behind last year. We're 26.86% bottom line versus 26.66. Most of that is coming from the parking lot, which had 0 last year because I think the person was out on maternity leave. And also you've got some in water that's higher than last year, 32 versus 22. And that's the distortion there, this year versus last year. Overall dollars though, once again, are lower than last year at this, or excuse me, they're a little bit higher than last year at this time. And that's indicative of the percentage when you look at the bottom line. Now it should be higher because our budget for overtime is up close to $100,000 over last year because mainly in the fire department budget was only $161,000 last year versus $265,000. Third page is equipment purchases. There's not much excitement there. There's some percentages that are high, but again, it's because of encumbrances for projects that are being worked on, and pretty much we're on plan with those. The next pages are the contract services, which is a real in-depth look at the expenditures, other than payroll that we have to manage. And on a total basis there, 43.38% this year versus 47.25% last year. All accounts, all departments, all funds, so we're ahead of plan. Didn't expect much different at this time of year because things are once again just getting rolling. You know, it's the first third of the year. A lot of things haven't really happened that are going to happen for the summer months, where you have your spending for summer projects and recreation, and you have your summer spending in public works, and you have, you know, additional overtime for police because of summertime, and, you know, a lot of different things. But basically, it's pretty much on plan, but in general, lower than last year overall, which is an encouragement. Now, I threw another one together quickly this afternoon, which is the employee benefits, because we have some concern over that because the healthcare budget is very aggressive for 2017. It's $500,000 less than the actual budgeted expenditures, the actual expenditures for last year, the way they actually came through. So I threw this together quickly, and I did a copy of this for all of you. Because I think this is going to be an area of concern we have to watch out for. The healthcare itself is running ahead of the budget. And I'd say we're about 5% over at this point. And if that's indicative of what's going to happen for the rest of the year, of course, you'll wind up being 15% over. And it's a big number. However, we got to be aware that January, February, March, and April, pretty much the cold and flu season, so healthcare costs are generally higher in the wintertime. It should bottom out a little bit for summer months and then start to ramp back up again in October, November. If you want to put this one up, Josh?
No.
Oh, you can't do that.
I can.
You
It's
can.
gonna take me 1 sec.
Okay. Overall, the employee benefits are 33.66 for this year, up over last year, 31.74, and I think that's because the healthcare percentages are all a little bit higher than last year as well. In the general fund, it was 38.76 this year versus 33 last year. Rec complex health insurance is at 35. They're all going to be higher because we're sharing the allocated costs, and the costs are higher in general than last year this time. So that's something I think we should be concerned about.
Well, what can be done?
It's a good question.
The $1 million.
We budgeted for a lower healthcare cost because obviously we thought we were going to have retiree healthcare costs being managed at a lower rate than in the traditional plan. That's not happened for all of the participants. So that's one of the things that I think is a driver for that cost being up. What can we actually do?
us in terms of finding something else?
Did we vote on healthcare today?
No, the House of Representatives did.
Oh. I didn't hear that, sorry, I was working.
What were you doing? Is that his question? Okay, all right, thank you.
So anyway. Really wouldn't want to make any speculation about that. I don't know how far-reaching that's going to be. Does anybody at this point?
No, that's actually what I'm thinking of, is are we now in a kind of a state of chaos where people don't know, and is that gonna cause insurance companies to pull out, you know?
I don't know. I'm concerned about the retirement numbers in here too. Obviously, that's another big number to us. If the state doesn't keep driving those rates down, if they drive them up, we're gonna be in trouble there. They drove them up 3 years in a row to us at 40%, 32%, and 29% to make up for their investment losses in 2008 and 2009 in the assets for the retirement plan. Now, of course, they'll reduce it by 2%, 3%, 5% a year, but that doesn't even come close to compensating for going up.
That's the state retirement lines on here?
Yes.
But they're lower than this time last year.
Which is good, because the rates did come down over last year, but I'm worried about what's gonna happen to them next year. Are we expecting them to stay either stable or come down, or are they gonna go back up again? I guess with the results in stock markets and, investment markets, we can expect maybe another decrease, but they certainly aren't going down as fast as they went up in 2000, I think it was 11, 12, and 13. No, 13, 14, and 15.
And we're fortunate with that fund, but at least it's not exactly a pay-as-you-go. It is a funded, there is a fund that's invested. It's different from our healthcare liability for retirees, which is a pay-as-you-go. There isn't any funded reserve set aside for those individuals. So we're more vulnerable on the retirees' healthcare benefit side fiscally than on the retirees' pension side.
Right. Except if we have another investment debacle and
There's still some risk, yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
Anyway, any questions about any of the monthly numbers? Department heads? We've got some numbers to look at between several departments to make sure that we have them in the right buckets, such as overtime for snow plowing. The Mikes and I are going to look at that. Steve and I have to look at some overtime that may be not budgeted or should be, posted someplace else. So those kind of things we have to deal with, but nothing major. You guys have any questions about any numbers?
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Richard?
We talked about the 5-year plan on Monday. I finished up the AIM funding work or model, let's say, the tool that we've been using for the last 10 years, or I've been using for the last 10 years. Sent that out. If there's any questions about that, let me know. I'm not saying that this should be our 5-year forecasting tool, but it is a good one. It does exactly what we needed to do, which shows you the major revenue funds, well, the general fund, and what happens to its fund balance and the water and sewer funds. And then you have an analysis in there about what happens to all those fund balances. There's also a property tax page, which has assumptions in it and has, some credible numbers about where we're going with assessment values. The main thing that I've done with these numbers is just put in some basic assumptions for the years going forward for the revenues and expenditures, but I've impacted this with the capital expenditure plan that was just approved for the 2017 budget. And you'll see that has a dramatic effect on these numbers. Because that plan going out 5 years has us spending millions and millions of dollars. So I'm putting those dollars in there to show you the impact that's going to have on debt service. And that pretty much is a driver for negative numbers through all of the fund balances for these funds. There's also a page about employment statistics. There's not much glamour in that. It's just, what the percentages have been for union contracts, except for the fire. And, headcount information. So any questions about that, please let me know.
We've got that loaded on the screen here. Would you walk through it
Sure.
with us? say AIM somewhere in the title, I think.
The benefits one? Well, I don't like giving stuff to the press.
Thank you. I just want to know, I can't remember off the top of my head.
That's all the benefits. It's healthcare as well as retirement, this, and that and the other thing. Okay?
Is it one of those, Richard? Do you see the title of it?
No, that's from a few years ago.
It's an Excel spreadsheet. No. Yes, it is. Third one down. You got it.
Okay. Okay, you believe this is a good model for our 5-year budget plan?
Sorry, I lost it. It's coming back.
It's the one that the state of New York provided for us when we had to do this every year to support their funding of the aids and incentives to municipalities, the per capita income sharing. We used to have to submit this every year, and there was a lot more to it. This is just basically the numbers for forecasting where you're gonna be year after year.
Will you briefly walk us through the tabs?
Okay, if you go
Tell
to
us
the
what they
property
do.
tax tab on the bottom, real property tax, that's the first one, okay. You can see the past years, 13, 14, 15, 16, those are the actual numbers. Now 17 is what we budgeted, 2,902,264 against 935 million in assessed value, it comes out 1166.
Too much.
Here you go. In 2018, I put in the new numbers for the tax roll for 2017 that were just issued this week. And I'm assuming a 2% increase, as you can see over on the right, on that row where the property tax dollars are, just based on a 2% property tax cap. And then after this year's change in the actual tax roll for the development that happened, actually our tax roll went up about 16, 17 million, so that's good because of development. I'm putting in 1% a year because that's generally what the state allows us for growth in the tax assessed value. So those numbers drive back to the first page, which is the general fund revenue tab. And those drive the revenue figures in the top for the property taxes, in addition to the other revenue figures that show up on that line. There's omitted taxes and there's a few other pilots and so forth and so on. The non-property tax items that I'm talking about are right below that. And those are the pilots and the omitted taxes and so forth. Then the next line down is your sales and your use taxes and other property, non-property tax items besides sales and use tax, which are like mortgage tax and a few other things that we get in. And so these are all the revenue items as you go down the page, and these are stated in the way that the AUD is reported each year. So it's consistent with what you see for our actual numbers that we file with the state of New York. And I'm making very basic assumptions about these things on the right. The 2% tax cap is there. I'm not saying anything about the pilots because those are pretty much frozen. There's a 1% assumption on growth of sales tax and so forth and so on, but very, very conservative numbers about where the revenue's going.
I noticed that.
You notice that. Next tab is the expenses. And this is where the meat starts to hit the metal. You've got two iterations of the same numbers, but they're just stated differently because one's based on what you call function and the other one's based on character of expense. Personal services is a character of expense, equipment, contractual service. I mean, those are like the reports we're looking at monthly. But then you can also look at the different expenditures by function, which are general government support. That's everything from the Common Council down to shared services. And then you get into public safety, which is fire, police, Joe's office, building. that's CD, and then you got culture and recreation, which is the rec complex and recreation people, but just the general fund piece of it. Home and community services, you're getting into, that's refuse collection, pretty much, and I think it's also backflow testing and those kind of things. And then economic benefits and fringes, of course, that's the big number, just like above, it's employee benefits. That's a big, big number. And obviously you see the second biggest number is public safety. Actually, that's the biggest number in our budget this year, and second biggest number is benefits. And then debt service is in there, and interfund transfers, and so forth. So these are the expenses, and once again, the assumptions for how they're going to increase are over on the right. Pretty much looking at 1.5% on labor costs, on personal services, and 1% on inflation of contract services and so forth. But the one that is dramatically impacted is the debt service, which you see as an interfund transfer line, second from the bottom on the top, and it's the same one down below. Goes up 35% in 2018, 19% in 2019, 15% and so forth and so on. That's a big number every year. And it's gonna happen if we follow that capital expenditure plan that we approved in 2017. Assuming a 3% interest rate and mostly a 15-year life for assets being purchased and installed. So the next tab shows you the difference between the revenues and the expenditures and what it does to the available fund balance. We finished the year in 16 better than we thought we would at $717,000 in fund balance. That's the bottom line on the 2016 column. So that's what we have available for, emergencies and unplanned expenditures. And what we budgeted in 2017 is to be even. And the only difference in the bottom line for the available fund balance would be the difference that we have in the restricted pieces that we're projecting for the end of the year. It basically goes up about $43,000 this year because of $21,500 coming from the college and $21,500 from the city to fund the grant for the matching grant for the fire truck, the aerial fire truck. So that's the difference in those two numbers, 741, 555 versus 795. So basically we're saying the available fund balance is going to be the same because we projected a balanced budget this year. However, we've already taken some money out of the available fund balance for unappropriate, or appropriated those amounts for unbudgeted expenditures, such as the two real property decisions that we just said we would get refunds on, and a few other things. $2,500, I think, for a traffic study. You approved those budget adjustments. So, if we make those numbers up somewhere, we'll stay at what we're looking at the end of the year if we balance everything. But going forward for 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, things aren't balanced. You can see the losses each year, and that includes the capital spending. And you can see what it does to the available fund balance, meaning negative $7 million by 2022. A big number to worry about. The next tab is the water fund. And pretty much it does the same thing on one page as the general fund was done on 3 pages. And the same thing for the sewer fund is the next tab. And then you look at the major fund summary after the real property tax tab, and it shows you, the fund balances and how they're impacted by the activity from those other worksheets up front. Pretty much that's how it works. It's an easy tool like the one that you put together that says if we put this in here, what to do sensitivity to taxes for next year. But of course, what you have to have for good information is how those numbers are predicted to change year over year and what we can do to change them to our benefit.
Now, we just voted on something tonight that we think may cost $800,000. Where would you insert that in this model?
800,000 was for
Well, potentially 800,000
Potentially.
for the arbitration.
Settlement.
go back to the expenses on general fund. That would go right in the
August, they typically will give you 45 days to pay it, so it will come out of the 2017 fund balances. It'd be very difficult for us to defer it to 2018.
So this thing looks very complicated, but it's not. But the key is the columns on the right about your assumptions. What's going to happen to the numbers?
Richard, under this scenario, am I correct in assuming that that would affect our bond rating, which in effect would cost us even more money to borrow?
Not as long as we balance the budgets. If we continue to balance the budgets, which
What, I mean, under the scenario with the, with the negative reserve?
Oh, having a negative reserve, yeah, that'll continue the trend we have right now. You know, everybody's saying that we're caution and, you know, negative outlook because our trend was going down. However, 2017, we balanced the budget. We did
And we
something.
raised taxes, that's
We
gotta
raised
go to
taxes,
us.
and that's a credit, believe it or not, that's a credit
Yeah.
positive action
Right.
by this council to do that. The bond markets look favorably on that because you took steps to make sure that we structurally balanced the expenditures and the revenues for 2017, which means financial stability, at least for this year. So that's a positive. But if the trend goes back the other way, they'll continue to look on us negatively. But if we continue to balance budgets as we go forward, they won't.
Given that our fund balance is gone, we really have no choice but to balance budgets in the future. In the past, we could get away with an unbalanced budget as long as we had a fund balance to take care of the difference.
It's pretty much like having a cannon pointed right at your head, isn't it? You don't have a choice.
May I poll the council? How do you feel about this model? Is it?
I think it's very helpful.
And I think John put one together, John Ruff, that
He did.
takes every expenditure line item like we're doing in the monthly report, and it'll do the same thing. It'll project forward, you know, what your costs are gonna be whenever you tweak numbers here and there. And it'd be easy to build in the change to the fund balances on that same worksheet as well. There's another one we have, which is the one you constructed, which is a one-pager. I like that one because it's just one page.
Right.
But that's just for the general fund, and of course, it's like, here's your items that are gonna affect you one time, and here's the ones that will affect you going out, and it shows you what your tax jumps are gonna have to be.
Really nice
make-
for
yeah,
a
that's a good-
simple snapshot of where we stand.
So any one of them
Absolutely.
works as far as I'm concerned, just a matter of which one we want to
It's a good
use.
tool, but
Yeah.
what do we do with it?
That's the key question.
Because
It's like,
it's
you got the
really
tools
nice.
to show you the
It's a
numbers.
nice tool, but
Now
you
what
need
are
a
we gonna do with the
craftsman.
numbers?
We can't make money using
We could just put numbers in.
spreadsheets. Yeah, you're right.
It's a hard problem to face. Now,
The figures don't lie.
I think part of the discussion today about the capital expenditures, I told you I'd keep showing you this every meeting. This is the projection for the general fund increase for just the general fund piece of the capital expenditures out of this year's capital budget. This is the one that's got the $500,000 increase in debt service in the general fund predicted. This isn't the total increase in debt service that we would face from the current 2017 capital expenditure plan. I believe that we'd be at close to 14 million that we have to roll forward in debt, and it's gonna raise debt citywide about $800,000. This is just the general fund piece going up 536,000.
Richard, you're usually very conservative or careful in your estimation. I think the 3% interest rate might be a little bit on the low side, given that there's gonna be 2 federal funds rate increases
Yeah.
before you'll actually go out to bond.
When I started doing this, it was back in January.
Mhm.
And then, you know, without a rate increase like we had in March, 3% was looking like a pretty good number. So I've got to find out what things are going for right now. At 10 million to 14 million, it's going to be a big bond issue. That can help keep the rate down. But I'll find out from Noah and his crew what people are looking at right now.
For forward for November. Yeah.
Yes. Because you're right, there's 2 increases expected before November, so that is going to have a driver in these numbers too.
And So this 838,000 of additional debt service, that's incorporated in your estimates for the expenses from the general fund?
And the water and the sewer fund in that other model, yes, that other tool. This is just the general fund. And I can update this for the total debt increase. We have 8.3 million that's already in a band that has to be rolled forward, and I think it's about 5.5 million we have to add to that, if we follow everything that's in the 2017 capital expenditure plan.
And you know the council has been discussing at the last budget hearing whether there's some adjustments we could do to the existing capital budget on some large ticket items that we are trying to explore to ensure we have that latitude for reducing the capital budget in ways that won't affect road construction plans.
Yeah, so by what method does one evaluate that, or how do we do that as a body or as a finance committee, or, you know, and when?
Highest priority,
Yeah.
highest priority items. Clearly, the roads have to be done.
So I'm sure I'm over my 10 minutes, but
Thank you.
any questions?
Kind of went into the next topic, which was
Yes,
our
we did.
model for budgeting, so thank you for your help with that.
Okay.
If you'd like, we'll take a look at one more budget model tonight, which I have loaded into the computer, and then I think we're all pretty well exhausted, so let's go ahead and do that. What I'd like to do is send all of these models to you and let you evaluate them on your own when you can sit down in front of the computer and look at what they do. It's hard to do this in this setting. You really need the time to sit down and examine what they do and make up your mind about, you know, what do you like, what do you not like, what would you like to incorporate into the council's budget model. So let's take a look at one more tonight, and then with your permission, we'll call it quits.
Which one?
The one you just had up there is a good one. Not that one. That's a good one. I forget who created this, but actually, Josh, there's a different one I'd like to. It's a little bit. Yes, this one. I think it was John Ruff or.
That was John.
John, okay.
Yeah.
John Ruff put this, and it's so neat to, if you adjust any of those figures in the input escalation column I, it changes the bottom line. So you can see he's pretty much got 1% and 2% for sort of a model, but you can easily see what happens to the bottom line each year when, for example, if you go down to the let's see, police, I think is a good one to look at, and just go over and change that to 1.5. And you can see that it automatically
Doesn't have
changes
fire.
the figures over the 5 years. So that's a pretty handy way to see, you know, what our thinking about what we're financing and how much affects the city's bottom line. I really thought John did a nice job of actually taking each one of those departments and making some guesses about where the numbers are going to be by department. So a taxpayer can actually take this and see, you know, what their contribution to, their own personal contribution to each of these activities is going to cost them. Pretty neat idea, I thought. So that's one I'll send to you also, and have you play with it and next time we get together, we can sort of hone in on what it is we want our model to look like. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
Okay, okay. Does that sound reasonable?
It does.
Okay, I think
Thank you.
we've done about all we can do tonight, I think. So, we do have the part of our meeting where we ask the public to come speak to us about anything on the agenda, if you would like. Or if any of our department heads have any questions, this would be a good time to